Nigerian stew has been part of my life like forever, literally. Hello and welcome to Jericho's Infusion, where we infuse the shared joy of creativity and innovation into our everyday meals. And today we are making Nigerian beef stew. Friends, the aroma from this stew can bring someone down the street into your house. All right, friends, let's get started. Let me introduce you to my ingredients. And we're using fresh produce for the stew, a lot of fresh produce. I'm not using tin tomatoes. So here, meet my scotch bonnet and habanero peppers mixed together with some long sweet peppers, tatashi. We call it in Nigeria. I got a lot of onions, about 5. I got some fresh ginger, fresh garlic, and I am using about 7 large tomatoes. I have about 1.5 kilogram of meat, and that is what we are going to be using for this beef stew. So first of all, we are going to go ahead and cut our beef. I will introduce you to the rest of our ingredients as we proceed. Now let's talk about this beef. I am using the stewing beef, and knowing what makes a good cut of meat at your butcher shop or steakhouse can be a bit confusing. So I love to buy my meat from ShopRite because they already have professionals who dissect the meat into various parts, because when you explain to the man in the market, a lot of them don't understand the basics. Now, why do you want to use this particular beef? As far as beef goes, it's mostly just about where it comes from in the cow and the marbling of the meat. What you want is the tough, lean cuts. These particular ones don't have as much fat, but they do have something called collagen, like connective tissues. This breaks down over long cooking, rendering the meat really tender, and then it adds a lot of flavors as the stew infuses into the meat, resulting in a tender, flavorful beef bites as you chew your stew. I don't know how to call it, but there's a word for it in Hausa. It's delicious. I washed my beef and I put that in a pot, and I am going to go ahead and marinate my beef. I got some thyme, curry powder, paprika powder, cayenne pepper, and I'm keeping my flavors a little bit simple. Now I got something very interesting, and this is my steak and chop spice. This is foreign brand, and it says it's for stews, for broth, and I tell you, I tried using it and it was so good. So consequently, because of that, I'm not using a lot of seasoning cubes. So because of that, steak spices, I use it for my steaks and my meat, especially beef. It's really delicious. It's completely optional. I didn't grow up using that. So trust me, whether you have that or not, your beef stew is still going to be very delicious. Just follow the processes. So I seasoned with some salt and some seasoning powder. I'm using no seasoning powder, and I'm also adding 2 stock cubes, okay? And then with all my spices. What I love about the steak spice is the fact that it has a little bit of brown sugar. It has a little bit of parsley. It's just a combination of natural flavors, and it's MSG free. I love that. It really brought out the flavor of the stew. So I'm going to add about 3 to 4 tablespoons of that spice to our beef. So we're going to mix everything until it is well combined, and we're going to set on fire to begin the cooking process. Now, I have washed my beef already, so what happens is when you wash your beef and you start cooking it, you do not have to add water immediately. It releases its own juices. And what happens is it makes your meat to get tender easily, faster than just putting a lot of water and begin the cooking process just like that, okay? Alright, so while our beef is beginning to cook up, we are going to go ahead and prepare a second simple marinade for it. And we are using one onion, medium-sized onion, one pepper, ginger, and about 4 cloves of garlic. So I'm going to blend all of this together and pour into our beef once it starts cooking. This is a combination of flavors, so simple yet so decadent and delicious. Now you can use whatever you have available for this particular second marinade. You can blend up some green peppers, you can blend up some chopped parsley, some coriander, fresh coriander leaves. You can blend up more peppers if you want, but this is stew. Come on. So we are going to stir all of this, and this is all the liquid I'll be using to cook this beef, and we will let this cook until our meat is soft and tender, but not completely soft, because we're going to fry our meat too. Okay. Alright friends, so while our beef is cooking, I am going to go ahead and prep my tomatoes and my peppers, and we are going to blend them up. So I didn't bother removing the seeds from the tomatoes because I am using about 7 large tomatoes for this, and this is quite ripe and it doesn't have a lot of that liquid in it. And secondly, the fact that I'm using a lot of fresh bell peppers, it overshadows a little bit of tang that the tomatoes have. I use these tomatoes for my salad, but if you're using the regular smaller size tomatoes, go ahead by all means and deseed them so that you will to stop you to enable your stew. It will stop it from getting sour. Okay, but another alternative, if your stew is a little bit sour, a tip, just drop in a little bit of baking powder and it's going to tame that down. Okay, now let me introduce you to the rest of my ingredients. I got some curry powder, spices, bay leaves, seasoning cubes, cooking oil, and I'm using the brand soya beans oil for this recipe. And I've already blended my tomatoes and it's cooking, and you want to cook everything until the water is completely strained to almost like 98% drained out of your tomatoes. Okay, look at how rich, vibrant, and beautiful. Trust me, you do not need any canned tomatoes for this recipe. The color is rich, and as you cook up your tomatoes this way, it releases a lot of flavors and aromas into it. You can blend your tomatoes and make it smoother than this, but this is what I want. Okay, now our beef is nicely cooked. Look at that thick, rich broth. Keep watching as we will incorporate it into our stew. Okay, so what we're going to do right about now is go ahead and fry our meat. I am dividing the beef into two. I'm frying half and I'm going to incorporate half into the stew like that. And there's something about cooked beef in stew, and at the same time there's something about fried beef in stew. They are all delicious. I want to enjoy both worlds, so I'm killing 2 birds with the same stew. Interesting, right? So we're going to fry this meat, and once it is dry, like you want it to dry properly, like let the liquid let it shrink up properly. Okay, you're going to bring that out from the oil and set aside. So I'm going to use the same oil I used for frying my beef to make this stew. And guess what? I used oil that I've been using to fry chicken to fry the beef. And friends, using this oil that has been infused over time with flavors from meat that you fried again and again, ooh, it adds a lot of flavor and aroma into your stew. All right, look at our beef. I think my husband I do beef once in a while because he loves beef so much, and I know that we need to reduce our intake of red meat. So he was already eating the fried meat before my stew was done. I had to put it away. So now I am going to go ahead and start preparing the stew. So into that went in our onions and I got some curry and some thyme and a little bit of rosemary, dried rosemary leaves. Friends, the aroma, like I said at the beginning of this video, the aroma coming from this beef, from this frying onions and seasonings and the bay leaves I just dropped into it. Ooh, it can send anybody down the street into your home knocking. I just hope you don't have any pregnant woman around your neighborhood, because she will be searching for where that aroma is coming from. So once our flavors and our spices and everything is fried up beautifully like this, we are going to go ahead and incorporate our stew, our cooked tomatoes, peppers, onions, ginger, garlic, and every goodness. Ooh. Whew. It smells so good. I can't wait. I have my rice cooking on fire, and I got some beans, and we're frying some plantain, and ooh, rice and stew with beans and plantain. Woo, delicious. Especially when it's piping hot. Oh my god, it's a heavenly experience. So we're going to stir all of this together and we will cover and let cook. Stew gets very messy for me. What do you do to stop your stew from getting messy? So I cover my stew to cook it, especially only for the buka stew. I cook it open. So I'm going to let that cook until it simmers down, and once the oil begins to rise to the top like this, I know that my tomatoes is a little bit cooked. I am going to go ahead and incorporate my broth and my boiled beef first. Look at that thick broth. It's full of flavors. If you notice, I've not really added any extra salt. I just added an extra seasoning cube into this, and the reason is because our meat is well seasoned already, so there's no need for any extra. So you just taste for salt to adjust in case you need more, but trust me, everything, even with the addition of this extra water, I didn't need to add anything. It was already so tasty. So I think this was a point where I added the extra seasoning cube, and I covered and I let my stew cook. Please make sure you give this recipe a try and come back and let me know what you did differently and how it went. And I know that you will come back with good testimonies. This stew is delicious. There are variations of making beef stew, but trust me, this is a winner. So look at that, our stew is cooking nicely. Oh, I kept coming back to clean the edges again and again. So I went back to reincorporate some of the oil I removed, because it has a way, when the stew cooks up, it has a way of draining the oil. It's there, but it won't really show. So that's what I love to do, set aside some oil and then reincorporate it back into my stew. And I added the dried beef. My friends and family, I present to you Nigerian beef stew. Delicious, classic. You will love this. It smells so good. You can serve the president with this and he will love you for it. Thank you so much for watching. Keep a date with me in my next video. Bye.